Right. And for people who didn't
Yeah,
listen to our last interview, not to keep interrupting, but
yeah,
John talked a lot more about his whole Google Chrome justification for himself in that last interview. That if you're
judge me,
curious about
people,
that,
judge me.
um, yeah, that's exactly what. Judge me.
Yeah,
But there were some very good reasons that I think that you used it, and they for if people who want a simplified answer, it's mostly for
yeah,
fast response times to things like 0 day attacks.
yeah,
So yeah,
pretty
but
much.
definitely go to the
Yeah.
last interview for that.
And I mean,
Um,
dude, look, I feel like no matter what I say, no matter what you say, we're going to get a lot of pushback from the community because we have a very toxic community. I don't know if this is a good segue to talk about how toxic the privacy community is, but it's pretty toxic.
right. So I feel like every community can be toxic. So I don't think it's exclusive to the privacy world. I think what really blows me away about the privacy world is, and I use this analogy for you. So we're
Yeah,
both
thank
vegan,
you.
and the vegan community, as people know, can be very intense and extreme, right? And I think the reason for that is because like we really, really value animal rights and we care about animals and we hate seeing animals.
I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
pause you for one
Yeah.
second. And I'm going to
Yeah.
say that if you care about human rights and privacy, I think you should care about animal rights too.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange to say, "Hey, I care about human rights but fuck animals." Like I
Yeah.
think if you're a privacy activist and if you care about human rights, you should try to care more about animal rights. And I would
Right.
be
And it doesn't
doing a
mean you have to be
disservice to everyone. Exactly.
right. You don't have to be vegan to do that, but I think that everybody should think about what they're doing and the choices they're making because it
Exactly.
impacts a lot more things than just what they think. So,
Exactly.
regardless, regarding the vegan stuff, vegans disagree all the time. You're going to see vegans talk about how much protein they need per
Yeah.
day, what kind of supplements they should be taking, or blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, there's still this kind of bond between people who disagree in the vegan community. You're going to see high fat, high carb people, but they're all like, we're still here about the animals. It's about the
Yeah.
animals, it's about the environment, it's about like the core cause. So despite disagreeing, in little nitpicky ways, all things
Yeah.
considered, there's still everybody can still like get along. And that's
Yeah.
what blows me away because I see some of these vegan YouTube creators and you're going to see people say I don't agree with you, but like still good on you for like spreading like good ideas.
This. Exactly.
And
Yes.
and we don't see that in our community. It's just it's non-existent. In our community, it's like I don't like the browser you use. Your browser you use is stupid. I don't like how you recommend this messenger. So you should just die. And it's like what in the world? Like why? Like we all care about digital rights and we are here
Yeah.
for digital rights.
Yeah.
And and here's the thing, I disagree with people. So I made as an example, and I don't mind name calling because it's coming from a good place, I think, and I think it
Yeah.
gives people a good example of this. I've talked about how I combine a different DNS with a VPN. Right?
Yeah.
I like to use NextDNS alongside my VPN connection, and one common criticism of that is that you will stand out a little bit compared to other people using that same VPN provider because the site can recognize that you have a different DNS tied to that IP address, and so you're technically more fingerprintable across
Yeah.
websites if you're doing this kind of configuration. And
Yeah.
this is something that like Naomi Brockwell, who's another YouTuber, talked about in one of her videos, which I didn't watch the video, but someone relayed that to me and said, Naomi Brockwell said that you're more fingerprintable if you do this. And you know what? Both of those things can exist. Like Naomi
Exactly.
Brockwell can say, I actually don't like to do this because I think it's more fingerprintable. And I can say I find the features that NextDNS provides me to be a lot more impactful and a lot more important than a slight fingerprint advantage across
Precisely.
websites.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, both of us still care about digital rights and keeping people safe. And just because we have different ways of doing that doesn't mean it's
Yeah.
still not a win. So
Exactly.
I know this has turned into a rant about me and me getting some stuff off of my chest, but I'm going to
Get
leave
it.
it in your court now as to like, what the hell's going on?
I don't know, man. It's really toxic out there. I don't think people realize how toxic privacy and security community has become lately. Not so much the cybersecurity community. I think it's been relatively better.
InfoSec
compared
is
to the
good.
privacy
Yeah.
community. I think InfoSec is good, but I think privacy community is absolute dumpster fire at this point. I don't know what the hell's going on. My only theory is that people have become increasingly ever more paranoid, and they're paranoid of everything. But you know what? Like that's not a healthy mental state to be in. Like you have to have your facts straight if you want to be paranoid, and you have to be paranoid for a good reason if you want to be paranoid. Otherwise, you're just the tinfoil hat person. Let's just say you're like the typical tinfoil hat guy, meme type. I don't want to just use the word guy, but I think you become that meme if you're just like the conspiracy theory tinfoil hat person, and it's just so unnecessary. So I feel like I think people are overly paranoid and they've become very toxic. I don't know where to begin with, but it's been hell on earth lately. Our customer support team's been going through hell, and we've been going through the same hell on social media, and we decided that fuck it, we don't have social media accounts anymore. We don't use Reddit, we don't use Twitter, we don't care about any of that shit. Doesn't matter. It's not going to matter at the end of the day because it's really toxic. All people do, and I will say this out loud, they just complain. Instead of actually having constructive arguments with one another, instead of having, hey, you know what? Maybe we have different threat models. Yay for us. We still want to have our privacy defended, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm pretty sure in the comment section, there's going to be 10 more of these right now after this video. It's crazy. So I think at this point, the way I feel about the privacy community is like, as long as you can manage to remain not toxic and remain sterile, so to speak, from all that toxicity, by all means, go read about stuff and enjoy the community as much as you can. I think your forum's doing a good job in that sense that I think there's like a much stronger moderation around toxicity, which is great. But I think there's so much disinformation in the privacy industry in general, in the community in general. So people are paranoid. People don't know how to react to misinformation or disinformation, or they're not educated well enough. I don't know what it is, but I don't think people are keeping an open mind. And it's maybe really important to say something that if you don't know something, it's okay to say, I don't know it. Like,
right.
People tend to just try to claim they know something to gain superiority or authority. It's okay if you don't know certain things. It's totally fine.
Right.
And then say, hey, you know what? I don't know this. I would love to learn more about this. Can you tell me more? Or can you point me to the right direction to get more information from someplace? And get more information. But I think there's a combination of these factors. I think there's a lot of people who are paranoid, they're hurt, they're scared, perhaps. They want to remain private or anonymous. Maybe they're in an abusive relationship. They don't know how to react. So it's like, I think they have every right to be paranoid sometimes. But I think the way people are going about it nowadays on the privacy community isn't healthy. And yeah, like I used to answer a lot of messages. I used to respond to a lot of people's messages, etc. I just stopped because it just doesn't make sense anymore. It's just a waste of time. Feels like people are just draining one another. So,
right. I think before I talk a little bit more about like responding to things and just the psychological side of things, one, I guess, important detail is that in this community, I think people think there is a way. There must be a way towards whatever your end goal is, to avoid companies or to be private, whatever it is, when that's just not the case. I think people assume that just because someone uses another browser, it doesn't align with what they're going for, that the other person must be wrong, instead of just the other person has different goals than them. And so I think there's this weird, and it's like worse than the diet industry, because like in the diet industry, there is always this whole idea that's spread that this is the diet. Like, I will fix XYZ because my diet does XYZ. And we see this even worse in the privacy world, which is someone will say, you have to be using this tool or else everything else is like not secure, not private, not okay. And I think that's also kind of a downside of that approach as well, which is people don't understand that, like, to keep in the context of browsers, there's actually probably a perfectly valid use case for somebody to be using Safari. There's a perfectly valid use case for somebody to be using Chrome, Vivaldi, pretty much anything there is a valid use case for. Exactly. Even things like Pale Moon and the stuff that we kind of throw jokes about behind the scenes. But like even those browsers have some kind of use case for somebody, and that's okay. And you're like, maybe not, but
maybe not Pale Moon, but that's okay. Yeah.
but no, like
Yeah.
But like, I'm sure there is somebody where like maybe Pale Moon makes sense for their values and what they're trying to stop. I don't know. I don't know
Sure.
who it is,
Why
but
not?
like
Throw it in there.
those
Yeah.
those things can all exist, man. I don't understand, and it blows
Exactly.
my mind. But
I think
what
I
really
think there's
makes
a really interesting situation for sure that I think there's this context lost in the privacy community where two things can be simultaneously true, folks. It's okay. Like, I don't know where it gets lost in context, but it's fine that some people have different ways of doing the same thing. It's totally fine. It doesn't have to be this polarized. We're all trying to stay safe and private. That's the idea. If you're kind to one another, it'll be easier. It's not going to get easier if you're just rude and yelling into the internet. So,
Right.
I mean, I think people are just stressed out about their personal lives, and it's a very easy way to take it out of everyone else because you're more anonymous and private in the privacy world, I suppose. So, I think it's easier to take it out of others when you're that anonymous and private. So I think everyone's stressed. If anything, that just shows that if everyone was happy, I don't think this would happen. So I would say people are probably stressed in their personal lives.
Right. And it breaks my heart a little bit too, because it's not just you. Like, I talk with a lot of other people who work on like the projects that people use every single day. And it's a very cool luxury to have, because I can just message, if someone has a question about a specific browser, I can just message someone who's probably part of that team or developing one of the extensions. Like pretty much most of the tools on our resources page, a lot of them I have a direct contact with. And it is not just you. It is not just me. Almost all of them universally deal with the same BS. And it really is like a community-wide problem, to the point where almost, first off, I've told you this before, and I've said this before.
Yeah.
Some of the teams straight up have dedicated therapists now
Yeah.
to deal with
I
the
can
toxicity.
totally understand.
And
I can absolutely relate
it's
and understand.
definitely discussions that have come up with my therapist, is like work and the community and how to deal with this stuff properly. And I'm sure, like, tons of other people.
Same for me.
So,
I can say the same thing. It's like one of the biggest reasons why I spent hours in therapy is this toxicity in the community, in the privacy world, and this anxiety and the darkness it creates. And then people wonder, like, why aren't people behind these tools and companies spending more hours building these tools
with the community?
that we love? Why are they quitting? Why don't they respond to the community? This is why. And it takes an emotional toll on the people who are developing these services. Like, look, I love what I'm doing. I'm privileged enough to be able to live off of it. I don't have to worry about my income. I don't have to worry about my livelihood, thanks to Cryptee. But perhaps some aren't, and that's totally fine. You know, if someone's developing a small app or a small tool somewhere, that's also fine if they can't fully live off of that yet. But if you make it their full-time job to deal with online toxicity, and you make them anxious and you make them depressed as a result of it, that's not cool. And I think we're putting a lot of pressure on people who are developing these tools to sort of be these, I don't know, messiah-like figures where they have to be like this perfect being that can handle all sorts of toxicity and still ship software every week and release updates every week and don't have any vacations and never sleep and always respond to customer support messages and whatever. It's like, it's not real. It's not fair. It's not going to work. It's only going to require more therapy hours, and that's going to cost.
It's intense stuff. I think people really don't take that into consideration when they're active as a part of things. And it's really sad too, because it's going to result in better user experiences for everybody, even if it's a service you don't like. Like, let's say you don't like a certain browser or a certain messenger, they might actually not be like, what's the issue in just relaying to them, hey, I don't like the fact that you don't have these two features that I really use for my messenger, and leave it there. And then they're actually more likely to listen to you and implement those changes. And also, from the other perspective, you have to consider too that, like, there's a big difference, and everyone's experienced this. There's a big difference between being required to do something and feeling forced to do it versus wanting to do it. And the developers behind the tools you use are a lot more likely to want to do things if they feel like there's a purpose to it and the people who are using it actually appreciate what you're doing.
Boom.
So
100% this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, this is
so
it.
like if you're a user, as I am for a lot of services, like, just don't be an asshole. Like,
thank you.
It's really simple.
It's really simple. And I think people don't really understand how difficult it is to remain competitive in the privacy and security industry right now, because we're open source. Like, everything we do is going to be taken by a competitor, and they're going to try to make that feature and bake that feature and ship that feature, and we're going to have zero competitive advantage. So that's good for you, the user. That's horrible for us, who is doing the research and development. right? So if we develop a feature and another competitor of ours someday take it and ship it, like, it's good for you, but where's the motivation for us then? Like, we don't get anything from this. And it's not just about the competitiveness of it. It's like the joy is gone because the community is toxic. The profit's gone because we're not the most competitive companies on the planet. We can't compete as open source companies. So what do we get out of this? We're not going to get anything out of this otherwise. And at some point, the joy is important. We need to still be able to enjoy what we do and not just get yelled at every day for what we do about
Right.
really random things that aren't even relevant quite often. So I think it's important for people to understand. It's okay if you have a different threat model. It's okay if you don't know certain things. It's okay if you don't understand certain things, but that doesn't require you to yell at others. Not just us,
Yeah.
but others in the community either. And I hope people will improve, but we'll see.
Guess we'll see. Hey, thanks for watching this clip. Here's another clip for you, and if you want to really dive into tech, check out our main channel, Techlore, for a deeper dive into digital rights, privacy, security, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.